My God. Now she's dead.
No, she's not.
She's alive?
She's Nosferatu.
She's Italian?
Dracula Dead and Loving It is my favorite film that Mel Brooks has directed. Some people may find this odd for a few reasons. For one thing, the film's reception wasn't well received when it was released in 1995, and the other reason being that people argue that Mel's best directed films are either Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, History of the World, and Spaceballs. All these films are fine. They are fun to watch, I got a good laugh out of them, and I would definitely recommend watching those films if you ever get the chance. For me, Dracula Dead and Loving It has always held a special place in my heart. I believe it was one of the first Mel Brooks films that I was exposed to in my younger years, and I would always rewatch this movie when I had the chance, and I was never tired of watching it. This was also around the time when I was discovering Leslie Nielsen's work, such as the Naked Gun series and other films that he has starred in. So you have Leslie Nielsen and Mel Brooks in a comedy film. What more could you ask for? Now, I know that the biggest criticism for this movie is the humor, and after watching the movie again with this bit of info in the back of my mind, well, I do understand. I get where everyone is coming from with these criticisms. To me, however, I never thought that the jokes in the movie were bad. They didn't really have me bust a gut laughing on the floor, but I did get a good chuckle out of a few of them.
What are you thinking about? Oh, Count Dracula! Just talking about you. Favorably, of course.
And I think the best way to describe the humor in this film is charming. Charming in the sense that when the joke is told, it got me thinking, I see what they did there. That's pretty funny. There was never a moment for me when the joke landed as a groaner. You have a lot of great actors in this film. You have Amy Asbeck, Steven Weber, Peter MacNicol, Harvey Korman, Lysette Anthony, and of course, Leslie Nielsen and Mel Brooks. All of these actors are playing the central characters for the Dracula story, but giving it a comedic twist to it. For me, the highlight of the film was seeing the chemistry between these actors, and it's a lot of fun seeing their interactions with each other. It's even more fun when you go to the special features page to turn on the commentary from the director, the writers, and the actors as they talk about each scene that's playing throughout the movie.
Here?
Yeah, it was the first time I'd ever really disappointed him in two movies.
Well, how?
I can't dance! And even on the little parts where I was supposed to be graceful and flip around and look I suck. See, horrible, cut away, and then that's her.
It's not Leslie.
Like that?
That was fine.
Okay.
For me, it's my favorite film from Mel Brooks' catalog, and I think it's a shame that a lot of people overlook this film. It's an even greater shame that the DVDs sold in the US don't really have a lot of special features for this film. Seeing as how this film is a comedy, I thought that there would be a ton of bloopers to show for each scene. And this film had used a lot of practical effects as well as CGI, and it would have been really cool to see some footage of how those scenes were created. Eventually, we did get a Blu-ray release of the film, and there were some additional special features added that weren't in the DVD, but I feel like there was more that could have been included in the Blu-ray release. To me, this was a big letdown, because a few years back, I had tried writing a report on this movie for a film class in college. We were given this midterm assignment on choosing one of the 5 classic monsters on the list: Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, The Invisible Man, and The Wolfman. Our assignment was to choose one of these films and compare it to another film that was made years later. My classmate and I had chosen Dracula with Bela Lugosi, and the film we chose to compare it with was Mel Brooks' Dracula Dead and Loving It. We wanted to make a report that would compare the serious take on Dracula to a comedic rendition. We were able to find a great amount of behind-the-scenes footage for Dracula from the DVD and various articles we had found online. But the same couldn't be said for Dracula Dead and Loving It, since at the time we only had the DVD. We even went as far as to visit the Margaret Herrick Library in Los Angeles, and we still came up short with our findings. In the end, we only had a few days left to turn in our report, so we had to switch to Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula film, since the Blu-ray had a good amount of behind-the-scenes footage for reference. Even though we ended up passing our midterms, I couldn't help but get this feeling of unfinished business lingering over me. We only had a week to finish our report, but I feel like if we were given more time, we probably could have dug up some more information for this film. But the report was turned in, and my classmate had moved on once the term had ended. But I decided to continue the search for more information about this film. Over the next few months, I ended up discovering some resources that I thought were pretty good finds. I discovered a German imported DVD on the film that surprisingly had one special feature segment where a German reporter was allowed to walk around set during the scenes, and he got to interview Leslie Nielsen and Mel Brooks. As I mentioned before, There was a Blu-ray release that had a behind-the-scenes feature that provided some more footage of the work that was happening on set, but like I said, I wish that there was more that was included. You can see that there are a ton of clips of the crew preparing to shoot a scene, but these clips only last for a few seconds. It got me wondering, why couldn't they include more scenes in this feature, or make the clips longer? Even if it was a clip that was as mundane as the actors getting ready to film a scene, I wouldn't mind. I love watching clips like these whenever they are included in a Blu-ray release. As I continued my search, I came across some magazines from distribution such as Fangoria and Famous Monsters of Filmland, where I was able to discover some articles that were worth a read and discover some photos that I had never seen before. I eventually came across a site called Reuters Screen Ocean, which was a library filled with footage from many films, and luckily, I came across some rare footage for Dracula Dead and Loving It. There weren't as many clips as I had hoped, but there was enough to satisfy my curiosity on the work that went into making this film. In the few clips that I had found, you can see the crew preparing the ballroom dance scene with Dracula and Mina, and it also shows a clip where the crew is preparing Amy Asbeck for the mirror scene during the dance. This was the kind of footage that I had hoped could have been included in the DVD extras because it's really interesting to see the work that was put into creating the practical effects. The other clips show an additional interview clip with Leslie Nielsen, and this time it shows the face of the German reporter conducting the interview. I tried looking for more information about this reporter because it seemed like he was the one who was recording the on-set scenes for this movie, but unfortunately I couldn't find anything more about him. So if by any chance anyone knows who this guy is, please leave it in the comments so I can do some more research about it, and hopefully I'll get some more info. If you want to see the clips for yourself, the behind the scenes footage, you can go to the website or click on the link that I'll provide in the description. As many years went by, I did manage to find some more clips and more articles, but recently I was unable to find any more resources for this film. I had set up my Google alerts for this movie in case anything had popped up, and for a while there really wasn't anything that appeared on my screen. That is, until this year in August, where I visited the Internet Archive to see that someone had uploaded the full screenplay for the film. I looked through this screenplay, and something that I had noticed was that there were some lines in the script that I don't remember hearing in the film. One scene in particular that stood out was the boat scene. Over the years, I would go on multiple search engines and look up any images for Dracula Dead and Loving It, and one photo that I've come across multiple times was one of Mel Brooks and Leslie Nielsen, and the setting looks like they're standing on a ship. Now, if you remember in the film, there is a scene on a ship where after Dracula hypnotizes Renfield to be a slave, they set sail to London. The scene plays out with Dracula's coffin being thrown around the cargo and Renfield chases after it. And once he is able to stop the coffin in place and talks to Dracula for a bit, the scene then transitions into a newspaper headline that reads that the crew of the ship were killed because of Dracula. In the screenplay, however, there is an extended version of the scene on the boat, where after Dracula wakes up from his coffin, he goes around the ship and attempts to feed off from the crew. And reading through this part in the screenplay, it's pretty funny, because Dracula is trying to feed from the crew, but he ends up scaring them to the point where they jump overboard. Dracula becomes annoyed because his only food source is being lost at sea, until he gets to the captain, who tries to kill him and fails and ends up getting his blood drained by Dracula. I was wondering if this scene actually did exist, like if they shot it and just never included it in the final film, or if they decided not to film the scene at all, either due to time constraints or some other reason. Instead of just leaving this at mere speculation, I had reached out to one of the writers for this film, Steve Haberman. I sent out an email and he was kind enough to answer my question. I had so many questions that I wanted to ask him about this film, but I only decided to stick to the one question about the boat scene and why it was cut from the film. I asked if this was just to make the film any shorter, and his response was, "We shot at great expense all of those scenes of Leslie trying to bite sailors on the ship in a storm. He scares them all into jumping overboard so he can't bite them. The last sailor, in the crow's nest, he approaches with the line, 'Hello, sailor.' That was the joke. But Mel was never satisfied with Leslie's reading. We previewed the scene, and it never got enough of a laugh, so we cut it out. My biggest regret was cutting out a line before that. After Dracula's coffin bangs back and forth in the hold of the ship, Renfield opens the lid and asks Dracula, 'Are you alright, master?' And Dracula answers, 'I felt better than this when I died.' I had mixed feelings about this discovery. For one thing, I was happy that the scene does exist. The scene is filmed and it's locked up in a vault somewhere out in the world and has yet to be made into a digital copy. The other thing, though, is that I was really, really disappointed that we never got to see this scene. It's such a tragedy that so many people went through the great effort of writing the scene, building the set, and filming it, and we never got to see it because Mel Brooks didn't like how Leslie Nielsen delivered his lines and decided not to include it in the final film. So that got me thinking, were there any other scenes that were cut because Mel Brooks didn't think it was funny enough to include in the film? So I decided to watch the movie again, while also reading through the script and taking notes on the scenes that were cut from the film. And by the time I reached the end, I counted there to be 19 scenes that never made it into the final cut. After reading through the screenplay and watching the film, I am now noticing that there are some scenes that feel incomplete. Some of the transitions look very abrupt, and the scenes look like they are missing something. Two examples of this are the scenes on the boat and one of Mina who's looking at Dracula from the window, but I'll get to this in a little bit. I remember reading through the screenplay and thinking, wait a minute, why wasn't this scene in the movie? This is funny. It's just a shame that a good majority of these scenes were never shown because I'm guessing the full cut was shown to a test audience at the time, back in 1995, and never got the reaction that was expected. I think this is very sad because now, almost 30 years later, there is a good number of people who really enjoy watching this film, and I'm one of those people. If you look at the behind the scenes video that I uploaded for this film, you'll see that a lot of fans are showing their love in the comments about this movie. That makes me wonder, what is stopping them from making another Blu-ray release and including these cut scenes that we never got to see? Is it a licensing issue? Is all that footage lost? Or has the thought never come up to go through the effort of finding the film reels and making them digital? At the moment right now, all we can do is leave it up to speculation and wait until the day that we are blessed with a director's cut. So at this part of the video, I would like to go over the cut content that I was able to find in the screenplay during my comparison viewing of the film. Some of these scenes are very minor, in which they don't really add too much to the film, but it's something that I still would have liked to have seen nonetheless. There are also some scenes that I thought would have given a little more context, or could have improved some parts of the movie, but I'll let you be the judge of that as I go down the list. Number 1. At the beginning of the movie, when Renfield is riding with the older peasants, there should be a scene where after the male peasant sees the sun setting, the wife performs a cross on herself. Number 2. In the scene where the villagers are telling Renfield not to go into the castle, there should be a scene where as they follow him out, they all wave their hands at him in a to hell with them gesture. This scene can be found in one of the TV spots for the movie. Number 3. There should be a very minor scene between Dracula and Renfield as they walk up the stairs and encounter the spiderweb. Number 4. There is some dialogue cut from Renfield where he asks Dracula why he is moving to London. I think the scene should have been included in the film because now that I watched this movie, this scene feels very rushed. Number 5. The scene where Renfield gets a paper cut on his finger and starts spewing blood all over himself is supposed to be longer. In addition to what we already see in the film, the scene continues with Renfield walking all over the room while leaving a trail of blood on the floor with Dracula following him like a hungry wolf. Both Renfield and Dracula walk onto the balcony where Dracula rips the shirt off from Renfield. Dracula then notices the cross around Renfield's neck and falls over the balcony. As Renfield calls out to Dracula, a bat flies up onto the balcony behind Renfield and transforms into Dracula. Dracula returns the shirt to Renfield, which is now clean, and as Renfield is putting his shirt on, Dracula unlatches the cross from Renfield and drops it over the balcony. A small part of this scene can be found in another TV spot, where we see Renfield asking Dracula if he needs help, and in this scene you can notice that Renfield isn't wearing his shirt. Number 6. There is an alternate scene with the vampire brides. The introduction for their scene is the same, but as they advance on the bed with Renfield, there is different dialogue, and there's a scene where as they nuzzle on his neck, they reveal their fangs as they are about to bite him. Dracula walks by the room and sees them, and he rushes over to the bed to pull the brides off of Renfield, and drags them to the balcony. Here, he scolds them for almost turning Renfield into a vampire, and they both glide out of the room just like in the film. Number 7. There is the scene on the ship where Dracula attempts to feed on the crewmates, but they become scared of Dracula and end up falling overboard. Dracula then encounters the captain of the ship, who shoots Dracula with his gun before becoming devoured. Number 8. This is a very small scene, but during the London title card transition, you can hear the ambience of the streets of London, and then you hear the sound of a horse carriage accidentally running over some people while the driver apologizes. Number 9. There is supposed to be additional dialogue between Dr. Seward, Jonathan, Mina, and Lucy as they talk about Renfield being the new patient at the asylum. Number 10. Right before the scene where Lucy looks out the window to see Dracula, there is supposed to be a scene where Lucy and Mina are in Lucy's room talking about their encounter with Dracula. Number 11. Before Mina visits Lucy, she greets the patients at the asylum, and she has a very brief encounter with the man in a straitjacket. Number 12. There's a missing interaction between Dr. Seward and Martin the orderly at the end of the breakfast scene, where Dr. Seward tells Martin that Renfield is eating bugs, and Martin is angry at this because earlier, Renfield gave him bugs to eat but told him they were raisins. Number 13. During the scene where Van Helsing is putting garlic all over Lucy's room, there is missing dialogue where Lucy is complaining about the overwhelming odor of the garlic. Number 14. There is an entire scene missing where, after Renfield is taken away from Lucy's room, Dracula tries to hypnotize Lucy into opening the window. Dracula is unable to hypnotize her, so he goes into her room while covering his mouth with his cape to protect himself from the garlic. When he gets to Lucy's bed, he finds that she is gone, and he struggles to leave the room because of the garlic. He tries to get the window open, and a wreath of garlic falls on him, leaving him rolling on the floor in agony. He manages to escape the room, and he finds Lucy standing outside, who then tells Dracula of her infatuation with him. This then leads to the scene where Mina sees Lucy lying on the bench while Dracula drains her of her blood. Number 15. There's a little bit of dialogue between Dracula and Mina right before they dance. Number 16. During the mirror scene at the ball, there should be a scene with Renfield looking back and forth between Dracula and the mirror. Number 17. There's a scene that is missing during the mirror dance where Dracula is spinning Mina, but in the mirror it just looks like Mina is spinning rapidly by herself. Number 18. As Jonathan carries Mina away after the fight with Dracula, Dr. Seward asks Van Helsing about the bite marks on Mina's neck, and asks if she is still under the influence of Dracula. Just then, Mina says, "Touch this," like in a previous scene. And finally, number 19. At the very end of the scene, Dracula's shadow returns and enters the coffin where Dracula's ashes were placed. The scene then moves to Dracula's name on the side of the coffin, and you can hear Dracula laughing. If by chance that there's someone in the film industry or some crew members who worked on the film, or even Mel Brooks himself, happens to be watching this video and you've made it this far, I would like to take this opportunity to give my thoughts on what should be included in the director's cut. Number 1. The cut content. There is the big list of scenes that I just read to you, and I think it's a shame that there are so many people who never had the opportunity to see these scenes. These need to be included as a special feature. If Mel Brooks and the rest of the crew didn't find the scenes to be funny, or they didn't think they were worth putting in the final cut of the film, I think that they should let us be the judge of that. Maybe a lot of people back in 1995 didn't find this movie to be so great upon release, but as we get close to that 30th anniversary for this film, you would be very surprised to see how many people in this time have a lot of love for this movie. And think about how great it would be for them to learn that somewhere out there, there's more Dracula Dead and Love in it that has yet to be seen. We had the tragic passing of Leslie Nielsen in 2010, and all we have left in memory of him are his films, the shows that he's been in, and the many interviews that you could find on the internet. So imagine how great it would be to find more footage of Leslie Nielsen doing what he loved doing most, which was making people laugh.
I get up early, to get to work early, to start laughing sooner.
Number 2, behind the scenes footage. I don't buy physical copies of movies anymore, unless it's a movie that I really enjoy and if the physical copy is packed with behind the scenes footage. Personally for me, when a movie has this amount of behind the scenes footage to watch, it makes me appreciate the film more, because you see that there is so much work that goes into making a film. Even if a film is not well received from most people, you can't deny that there are other factors in this movie that works well. For me, one thing that I will praise this movie for are the set pieces that are used and the costume design, and I think they did a really good job in setting the scenes to fit the Victorian era, and I think it would be a real treat to see the process and how they brought this world to life. Number 3. Bloopers. Now, with this being a Mel Brooks comedy, you know that there's bound to be bloopers for such a film. We were able to see some of the bloopers in the German imported DVD, and I have a feeling we barely scratched the surface with the few that we have seen. It would also be great if we could see some bloopers of the actors breaking character. If you listen to the commentary, you'll hear that the actors would break character so many times because they would end up making each other laugh. I always appreciate it when we see the actors having fun making a film, and something that helps a film aside from its story is the chemistry between the actors. It's very endearing when you see everyone having a good time with what they are making, and it would be great to see more of that. And finally, number 4, a black and white version of the film. From what I've read, originally this wasn't going to be a comedy. This film was going to follow a more serious tone, and there was the possibility that the film was going to be in black and white, just like Brooks' previous film, Young Frankenstein. Personally for me, I'm able to watch this film in black and white since I was able to add a mono filter and an audio pass to give it a vintage sound, and I think this film looks great in this format. But I'm sure not a lot of other people are as tech savvy as I am, and they're not able to do this on their own, so I think adding this as a feature would be great for the audience. So in the end, I believe that Dracula Dead and Loving It deserves a director's cut. It's not as bad as people made it out to be. It's a fun film, and it puts me in a good mood whenever I watch it. Not only is this video sort of a love letter to one of my favorite movies directed from a very funny man, but it's also a chance for me to attract interest in getting more from a film that was sadly overlooked. It's been a fun journey spending the years after completing my film class in tracking down any information that I could find for this film and making it known to the public. Chances are that there's a film student right now who is making a project about Dracula Dead and Loving It, and the last thing I would want is for them to turn up empty-handed like I did. We are 1 year away from this movie becoming 30 years old, and I think it's a good time as any to get a director's cut. I would pay good money for a physical copy, and I'm sure many other people would as well. But that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching. I would like to give a big thank you to every person who has contributed to this film, who was kind enough to message me back and give me more information about this film for my research. If you like this video, please leave a like and comment if you're a fan of this film and what you would like to see if we ever get a director's cut. If you're a fan of this film, please share this video with your friends. Hopefully, if this video gets more exposure, it might land in the hands of the right people, and that goal to getting a director's cut might be closer than we think. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys. Just want to say thank you guys again, and have a good night.